Well, hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another CI Chit Chat. I feel like it's been a little while since I've been here. I'm excited to be back. Was across the pond last week over in the UK, over in the west of London, a lot of time in and around London, but was over there with a group called the Global Farmer Network. So missed out last week, but was learning a lot over in the UK about policy and advocacy and global agriculture. And we got to keep fighting for ag, and nobody's going to do it for us. So we're going to keep making this happen ourselves. But before digging in, there's a wide array of different topics that we need to hit on here today, and definitely get your questions in the chat. Shoot those questions along our way. We got some that we'll get to, but pop your questions into the chat here as we go. We want to be able to get to them. Let's back things up though and start as we always do. We're talking about CI. We're talking about carbon intensity here. That is essentially the unit of measure that's utilized specifically by the U.S. Department of Energy in order to calculate the carbon footprint. It's a unit of measure for the carbon footprint. And it basically levels the playing field so they can compare different types of fuels, different energy sources, and specifically as we talk about biofuels produced from crops such as corn and soybeans, and biofuels such as ethanol, biodiesel, renewable diesel, sustainable aviation fuel. We're talking about being able to compare the carbon intensity of regular fossil fuel versus the carbon intensity of a renewable fuel like ethanol. And part of that carbon footprint of that ethanol is the corn or the crop that was grown in order to produce that biofuel. So we need to tell our story and connect our on-farm carbon footprint to the biofuel carbon footprint, and ultimately that gets reported through the supply chain. And there's some incoming tax credits to compensate biofuel producers to lower their carbon intensity score. You can lower your carbon intensity score of your biofuel in multiple ways. The corn and the on-farm practices is a big way to do it, and that's our main focus. And we've already quantified 300 million bushels of grain, and have found that the average carbon intensity of those 300 million bushels is an 11.2. The default score provided by the Department of Energy is a 29.1. So without knowing your actual score, without getting your data organized, without getting your actual score verified, you are a default of 29.1. But of our 300 million bushels we've scored already, we found that the actual average score is just an 11.2. Significant decrease, 18 CI points of reduction on average, just sitting there ready to be integrated into these emerging market opportunities. So I'll circle back into the farm side of things. We got a variety of updates on that side, but one of the main ways that biofuel producers can lower their CI score is by capturing their CO2 that would have been emitted, capture it, and basically utilize that CO2 or store it in geological formations underground. It's called carbon capture, utilization, and storage. CCUS or CCS, carbon capture and storage. And a lot of us know it as the pipelines. And because a lot of ethanol plants are not necessarily located over the top of the correct geological formations to just capture their CO2 and pump it straight down, there are some ethanol plants that are able to do that. I believe over in DeKalb, Illinois, ADM has been doing it for 10 years. Up in North Dakota, there's a couple ethanol plants that are already sequestering carbon up in North Dakota. Variety of things happening in all kinds of other places around the country as well. But the big update since the last CI Chit Chat is last week, the Iowa Utilities Board granted approval for the Summit pipeline. And essentially what it does is it allows them to be able to utilize eminent domain for this energy utility, deeming that it does tie into the arena of public good, I think is the terminology. I'm not an expert in that space at all. But point being is the Summit pipeline basically already had the green light in North Dakota and from the governor up there. Now they got the green light from Iowa and kind of the start of the pipe, and then they'll continue to work through to connect the two together. But um, either way, the pipeline the pipeline is important in this conversation. I want to explain it in regards that the on-farm average CI reduction that we've quantified would be about an 18-point CI reduction on average, just from collecting the data and the practices that are already implemented. The pipeline or carbon capture reduces your CI score of ethanol by about 30 points. So that's why it's a huge reduction. But you can do both. And now, if things are going to move forward with the pipeline, that's fine. Those companies can, that's their thing. But if you have a CI score of your ethanol today of about a 55, which is the average, and you get a pipeline, now you're at a 25, you still have 25 more points to reduce before you're at carbon neutral. And the low carbon grain can play a significant role in getting you close to that net zero. If you don't have a pipeline, which even with the approval, it's still going to take years before they get it actually in the ground. So we got to get the low carbon corn really rocking and rolling. There were some rules that came out from the IRS. It's been about a month ago now. And the IRS said that the indication was that this 45Z still is going to start in January 1, 2025. Every single biofuel producer needs to fill out an application and get approved before Jan 1, 2025 in order to qualify. And the IRS said, if you want to make sure that you're approved before Jan 1, you need to submit your paperwork before July 15th. Basically saying it's going to take them 5.5 months to go through the paperwork and do the approvals, which seems like a long time, but I guess I don't do a lot of those type of government applications, so I don't know. But they did say Jan 1, 2025 is still the indication of this thing is starting, and they had a whole bunch of different fuels that were in there. And basically I read through the information as well, the report, and it still is saying that they're working on the actual Argonne Labs, GREET model, and saying that that's what they are planning on utilizing. They're going through some additional changes. They said more guidance is to come out here soon, but no indication as to exactly when that is. Which brings me to one of the key things for this conversation, which is that last week, the USDA announced a request for information where they want to get some feedback so that they can have their thoughts together, have their information put together, because they know that the IRS is going to be asking them for information. So what I mean by that is the IRS has the ultimate say-so, right? This is a tax credit. The IRS writes the code, the Department of Treasury, they get the final say-so. But USDA has been part of these conversations, and they anticipate that they will continue to be part of these conversations. They were not asked to go and get information from their constituents and from agriculture. Rather, the indication that I have heard anyway, and what I read, is that USDA is being proactive to go get feedback from the ag sector to have their ducks in a row so that when the IRS asks them, what should we do here? Then they're ready, which is awesome. Like, kudos to them, and kudos to Secretary Vilsack for initiating that. I know Robert Bonney was very involved as well. I've interacted with him for years. I think Bill Hohenstein as well. Maybe he might have been the main one actually. But and then our Iowa boy Tim Gannon as well. He was on the podcast. We've got a YouTube video with Tim Gannon, so I'd encourage you to go check that out. I need to follow up with him, get some more details as to exactly how are they thinking through some of these details. But I'll be digging into writing a letter to the USDA, voicing our opinion. We'll get that put out there publicly on here's what we are proposing that they should do, really to make sure that they're utilizing the full extent of the GREET feedstock calculator. They're collaborating with farmers to gather feedback and improve that model over time, but give farmers the flexibility to not have to utilize only 3 practices to lower their CI, which was what they did with 40B. Don't just use those 3 practices, use the full extent of the GREET model, which has lots of different ways that farmers can be innovative and lower their CI score. So that'll be the main thing that we'll be that will be helping them to understand and showing that it is very much real. Like we can very much so get the real on-farm data. We are doing it. We are doing it at scale, and this can go not just for this biofuel opportunity, but well beyond as well. So, anyway, so be looking for that feedback stuff. I posted a couple things online. There's a Reuters article and stuff when all this was announced. Things on my Twitter. I'll get some other stuff sent out though, and I'm sure we'll send some emails and some other marketing material about it here next week. Yeah, thanks, Diana. Diana, I think you sent that just to me. Go ahead and put that out there for everyone if you want. So let's see. Okay. Oh, and thanks, Joanne, for some of the information about the pipeline and all that. Appreciate putting that in the chat. So USDA making progress, asking for feedback, IRS indicating GREET model and indicating January 1 start date. So great momentum there, great movement forward. On our side, we of course just went through a price increase. So today is the first full day of our pricing being slightly higher for CI certification. And it's been an amazing turnout the last couple of weeks of farmers stepping up saying, no, we need to get our ducks in a row. And the whole point of this increase is we've got to get all of our stuff submitted to verification. We have to submit the first tranche of data to our third-party verifier, who is an accredited verifier. They follow all the ISO standards and stuff. Very, very well known in the biofuel space. So we have to send them the first tranche of all of the data before harvest, like 1st of October. So we got a lot of data work to do between now and harvest time. And we want to just make it easy for you as the farmer to get your data organized and integrated into the system. We did launch some brand new features on Topsoil here over the last week as well. Specifically, we launched our activities tool, which makes it really simple to document an activity, assign the activity to fields, edit specific field level activities, or document the actual practices that happened on your farm. So that's all moving forward. If you're already enrolled in our program, be sure that you're talking with your Regen Success agronomist, your Continuum Ag representative, or talk with your dealer. They will help you to document all this stuff. It is brand new, so definitely be patient and give us feedback if you see anything that is being funky. We'll continue to make adjustments, but we want the farmers to own their data here, be in control of it, just make it easy for you to get it all organized and get it verified if you so choose. So I think that's the main things there that I for sure need to cover. There's a lot of stuff. And yeah, Diana, thanks for getting that Reuters article out there. More to follow up on the feedback to the biofuel folks, or more feedback as far as to the USDA. So we'll get on that moving. I did want to share maybe a little bit of additional thoughts and feedback, and put some questions in the chat if you guys have any questions about verification, USDA recommendations, the IRS rules that came out, what the documenting the practices, whatever you guys want to talk about, just put that in the chat. I want to share a couple of my takeaways and thoughts from my recent trip to the UK. So over to England there last week. One of my main takeaways in regards, at least to regenerative ag and sustainability, is that, at least in my mind, when I think of Europe, when I think of the British, I think of them being very ahead when it comes to sustainability, when it comes to carbon markets, when it comes to regenerative ag and all that. Like, I feel like they talk about it all the time. It's like a huge thing over there, and at least in my mind, I feel like they're way ahead of us. But over there, I realized and saw that they have a lot that they got to get sorted out too. They're not really much further along than we are, and in some cases, they actually have even more confusion going on than what we have here. And a lot of farmers there that aren't necessarily enrolling in sustainability programs either, or different carbon programs, or some that are successful. I met up with my buddy Ian over there, and he was sharing with me a really successful carbon credit program that they've been involved in, utilized a lot of direct measurement soil sampling, and they're seeing some really good returns there, and good successes for their farmers. But there's still a lot of unknowns. One of the things that did come up multiple times throughout the week, though, was companies asking about carbon intensity as part of their strategies for decarbonizing. It came up multiple times. Really interesting. They weren't asking about, hey, how do we develop carbon credits, or how do we work with farmers to produce carbon credits? They were asking specifically about how do we work with farmers to quantify their carbon intensity and utilize low carbon intensity products to produce a low carbon intensity supply chain. So really interesting that that over there they've kind of made this shift that I've been harping for almost 2 years. This shift kind of away from carbon credits and more towards carbon insets or scope 3 quantification and carbon intensity. So really interesting that they are seeing that same type of transition occurring. But that being said, there wasn't necessarily any great tools developed to be able to actually quantify what your carbon intensity is. It's just that the world is moving more towards quantifying your actual carbon footprint or quantifying your actual scope 3 impact, but they don't have all the science put together. They don't have all the calculation stuff put together. And we definitely don't have it all figured out and all put together here, but we have this Department of Energy GREET model that does allow us to quantify carbon intensity, at least for corn, soybean, sorghum, and rice. And then they're adding wheat and canola. So not perfect by any means, but at least we have some standards, some quantification protocols. So that being said, I think there's an opportunity for us to continue to really set the precedent, right? To be able to set the precedent, be able to help farmers outside of biofuels, help farmers outside of corn, soybeans, sorghum, help these farmers to really tell their story better and get sound science and work together to make it even more accurate as we go forward. So a lot of really, inspiring discussions and chats and stuff about our opportunity to really go and tell our story. And this carbon intensity metric, it definitely not perfect, but gosh darn, like it's at least something that we can build upon and get rolling. So excited to be leading that charge, and I don't know, we're a lot to get sorted out on our side as far as how can we help to expand and go beyond the biofuel space and go beyond just tax credits and help more folks to be able to quantify their carbon intensity. And I think there's more and more markets continuing to emerge that will compensate people for it. But nonetheless, it all starts with having your data really well documented and organized. Over there, they did have a lot of different programs now that are government programs, a lot of different government stuff they were talking about. Obviously, we have similar type of government programs here. They were talking about different set aside, nature programs, they call it. We call it CRP, the Conservation Reserve Program. They were talking about different payment programs for cover crops and better fertilizer management and no-till and stuff like that. So they have their stewardship program stuff. We have CSP, Conservation Stewardship Program, and EQIP, Environmental Quality Incentive Program. So it's a very, very similar type of government programs, but I do think that there's this common thread and kind of common missing piece around carbon intensity and quantifying the actual outcome. So excited to help lead the charge and help people to get their data organized and get all that put together and moving in this direction. A couple other things, I suppose, and toss some questions out there. I'm just kind of rambling all over the place, but a couple of things that we are preparing for. Maybe I'll share on the farm. We actually harvested our relay crop yesterday, which is great because it was raining when I came into the office this morning. So this relay crop, it's our 6th year doing it. And essentially what we are doing is that in the fall, we plant our cereal rye, just like we do in our normal cover crop program. So we harvest corn, then we plant the cereal rye, And then in the spring, we plant our soybeans into that cereal rye. And rather than terminate the rye like we normally do when the rye starts dropping pollen and going reproductive, instead of terminating the cover with a herbicide, instead we bring out the combine here in July and we harvest the rye over the top of the growing soybeans. Then we come back in the fall and we harvest the soybeans. We do this so that we can produce our own cover crop seed. So that rye that we harvested yesterday, we keep it as cover crop seed. We get it germ tested. We usually send it to Iowa State, and they've got a lab that it's not very expensive. You send them a sample of the seed, and they test it and send you back the reports and all that, and so that you know what you've got. But also, you have to do that if you want to get any type of cost share um, on that on the seed when you replant it in the fall if you want to utilize it in the cost share programs. Got to be germ tested. The new thing that we did though this year, beyond just the relay of soybeans and rye together, we did a relay crop of alfalfa and orchard grass with rye. There was a little bit of oats in the blend as well, but the rye, for the most part, kind of snuffed those out. And the oats didn't do super well trying to grow underneath a growing canopy of cereal rye. But the alfalfa and the orchard grass looks awesome. And this is for a guy that we do a lot of custom farming for. So this was cereal rye planted last fall. Then the alfalfa and orchard grass and oats blend was drilled directly into that cover crop this spring in April. Probably should have been done a little bit earlier, but it was planted in mid-April. And then now we harvested the rye over the top of that hay crop. The rye will again be utilized as cover crop seed. The rye seed will be kept and utilized as cover crop seed. The straw can be baled off. It was really interesting that on the soybeans, they're really tall this time of year already. So we're kind of just cutting just the tops off of the rye. But this alfalfa was significantly shorter. So we were able to harvest the rye a lot lower to the ground and leave a lot of straw. That the straw is actually going to be baled and the straw is going to be sold. And then when the hay crop is ready, it'll come back and be mowed and baled as well. So really interesting. It's kind of like the whole nurse crop thing and how they a lot of times used to do a seeding of alfalfa, plant it with a companion crop of oats or something else. This was just instead of planting the companion crop at the same time as the alfalfa, the rye was planted last fall. Then the alfalfa seeded into it, and now the rye able to be harvested as an additional crop. So I've got some pictures of it on my Twitter if you want to see it. But I haven't heard of anyone else doing it quite like that. But so fun little experiment. And the rye yields on our stuff that was in the soybeans made like 25 bushel the acre. This stuff over the alfalfa ended up being around 29 bushel the acre. So definitely not amazing. Usually we're shooting for around 30 bushel the acre. We weren't super far off, but a lot of our stuff the rye got planted really late last fall. And I suppose just with the weather situation that we've had, like it was fine. Nothing incredible. But the beans, the alfalfa, the second crop looks really good. It's catching a rain right now as well, which is fantastic. It's like ideal situation. Harvest the rye and then get a nice shot of rain. So excited to see how these beans turn up here and keep building soil health with trying to be aggressive with the diversity. So on those beans themselves, they would of course have a low carbon intensity by having there's hardly anything on these beans. There's no fertilizer. They'll go one pass of herbicide. That's it. No seed treatments. No nothing. So they'll have very, very low footprint. And then next year's corn will have cover crop and not going to need very much fertilizer on it at all because these soybeans nodulate a lot in order to get in order to get a lot of nitrogen that is coming out of these beans. Okay, so there was a question that came through, and actually just one that really needs to be clarified. So a farmer asking, okay, what the heck? Why are we paying $7 an acre and go through all these hoops to document all this stuff and get paid $7.75 per acre? I don't know where exactly that's coming from. I'm assuming what you're talking there is in the current 40B rules, which is it ends at the end of this year. You won't have your crop going into 40B, so it's not applicable to any U.S. farmers right now, since the crop that you're growing here today isn't going to end up going into sustainable aviation fuel by the end of this year. Like, just it's not going to happen. So you'd have to harvest it, turn it into ethanol, and then the ethanol to sustainable aviation fuel, and that's not even happening right now. They're bringing in the ethanol from Brazil to produce sustainable aviation fuel. So this farmer, I believe, is saying, hey, in 40B, all they give us on soybeans is a 10 CI point reduction for soybeans grown with no-till and cover crops. 10 CI points of reduction. When you translate it to the actual premium, it ends up being the total tax credit value of, on average, like some quick math puts it around like $15 an acre. And then the farmer gets, a portion of that. And I think that's what this farmer was getting to, saying, if I'm only making $7.5 an acre on my soybeans as a premium, why would I pay you $7 to go get it verified? Like, not making anything. And I agree. I would definitely not pay. I'm for me, getting paid a premium for $7 or whatever an acre. I don't know that it's going to be really worth it at all to give them any kind of data. Data collection alone costs about $20 an acre with all the precision technology, all the time, all that kind of stuff. Then if you're utilizing a software like ours, and that's getting you verified, there's a cost to all this stuff for $7. If you're only going to earn $7, yeah, no way, I wouldn't pay wouldn't pay anything on that. So I agree with this farmer that if your value is only going to be a revenue of $7 or $10 an acre, paying somebody $5 or $7 an acre really going to be probably not going to be worth it, which is why it's so important for us to voice our opinion to the USDA to make sure that they actually give us credit for our real CI score, which you can get at topsoil.ag. Go figure out what your actual CI score is. And we need to be able to tell our real story that our CI scores in a lot of cases are significantly lower than what the government gives us credit for. And the financial opportunities can be significantly higher than a couple dollars an acre. If your score is, if you're only going to get a couple dollars an acre, or if the government screws up these rules, this isn't really going to happen for $7 an acre of a premium or 7.75 like this grower's asking about. That's not going to get people out of bed to go and participate and jump through all the hoops to do this. So we've got to be pushing for telling our real story, using the actual GREET model, helping our friends in the biofuel space to really decarbonize substantially, grow the pie of these tax credits. Then I believe there's some opportunity here. So from everything I'm seeing, I think there's substantial opportunity to create significant ROI for paying $7 an acre to document all your data, get it verified, make it legit, but where you still own it. I think there's ample opportunity to create significant ROI on that. More details and more rules to come, but we need to voice our opinion and make sure that that we don't sit back and just be takers in this space, but makers. Let's go make it happen and make sure that things get done in a manner that this is going to work and work for a lot of farmers and set a precedent. Because, like I shared, the rest of the world is looking for this exact type of thing. They don't have it figured out, and we need to be the example and show them, here's how you can do this well. Here's how you can collaborate. Here's how you can actually make meaningful change. I'm excited to lead the charge and make that happen. So happy to chat more. Whoever the farmer was that asked that, I don't have years one that was submitted throughout the week, but I'm happy to talk through more of the details and run some numbers with you. Don't know all the details yet, but happy to share our thoughts and perspective. For everyone, thanks for hopping on. Have a great 4th and spend time with the family. I know I get to go and do that myself. And we'll see you again here next week. But thanks, everyone. See you next time.